Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 71. We're going to be talking about a couple things, but one of them is a Lotus Eaters video went up about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, we didn't get around to it till now, that I think we should address. And I want to say, for the record, the Lotus Eaters is a channel that I subscribe to, and I usually like what they have to say, but I think that when it comes to men and women, there is a blind spot, as to be expected from most people who haven't been doing this for as long as I have, or Allison has, or Karen has, or Hannah has, or Dr. Randermacam has, that there is going to be that blind spot. So we're going to see how big the blind spot is, because apparently there is an assertion that the men's movement is all out of steam. It's dying. It's not succeeding. It's not making progress, whatever it is. So we'll get into that in a moment. But
sure, I would love to address that. Yeah, I should do the
we'll
things,
definitely
right?
address it. Yeah, but yeah, we'll address the things, and then I want to talk a little bit about your Twitter shenanigans.
Oh, my adventures in Twitter.
Your escapades, and then we'll get
You
into
need like a leitmotif for my adventures in Twitter.
Yeah.
That's the way that you pronounce that. Like a little, maybe like a little flute.
Yeah.
Like a light.
Yeah. You know what? I all I have is this, I guess.
Execute Order 66.
There you go, Allison. Execute
Yeah,
Order
right.
66.
All right, on Twitter. Okay, well, before we get into Twitter, I just want to remind everyone we are doing a monthly fundraiser at feedthebadger.com/support. I would really love it if you would help out, because that's how we keep doing this, is because of your support. And also, if you at any point during the show you want to send us a message, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. You will get the full benefit of avoiding YouTube's minefield of censorship, and we will get the full benefit of your funds. So if you want to give us a shout out, show that we're not screaming into the void, if you just want to say, hey, you're doing great work, here's a tip, or if you want to respond really critically and in a vehement fashion to something you disagree with, once again, it's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. As to my Twitter adventures. Okay. So for some reason I got tagged in this discussion with, I guess, a coffee shop feminist. And so we were going back and forth because she sort of lumped Cassie J in with Andrew Tate and Pearl. And while I don't necessarily disagree with everything that Andrew Tate and Pearl said, so I'm not throwing them under the bus, I do think that there's a categorical difference between Cassie J and them. I think that they occupy a very different ecological niche of the gender sphere, shall we say. And I would say that Cassie J's niche is much more defined by not thinking that oppression really relates to the relationship between the sexes. In other words, the oppression narrative doesn't really make sense, either women oppressing men or men oppressing women. Whereas I think that agitators like Andrew Tate and Pearl are much closer to the idea that women hold a large amount of social power over men, which I don't think is inaccurate to assert, and that therefore women could be seen as oppressing men. And so I got into this back and forth with this feminist, and I said, well, like, if you're going to have, I'm going to imagine we have a table, like we have like a round table, right? Like the Sir Arthur, or sorry,
yeah, King Arthur,
and the Knights of Camelot.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this table, and if we're going to have the position that men oppress women, and incidentally, she went back and forth about how she says, oh, I don't think that feminists think all men benefit from the patriarchy. And like, nobody actually argued that feminists believe that all men are benefit from the patriarchy. What we've argued is that feminists believe that men are more to blame for the patriarchal system, and that patriarchal system benefits them at the expense of women. And also men oppress women. And then further down the stream of shit from that is men hate women and want to kill them and rape and murder them to establish their dominance. But we're just talking about the wellhead of Ephula, which is men are primarily to blame for a society that privileges them over women. Now that's the feminist position, and the feminist position has been the only position at the table for how many generations now? 3 or 4?
Yep.
Okay. So at some point we popped up, and I don't even know if we have a seat at the table so much as we're standing beside it, with a like a maitre d' with like a rag, not a rag, like a towel cleaning up the feminist mess. So we're just there and we're just pointing out, hey, did you notice all of these things that just fall into the cracks of your theory, like male victims of domestic violence and rape, male victims of war, male victims of false accusations, the problems with how we approach male victimization, and also the family. And do you notice all of the messes that you're leaving behind when it comes to men? And a few of us are like, you notice the messes you're leaving behind when it comes to women? And the feminists have just been like, yeah, fuck you. You're a bunch of misogynists. How dare you ask about feminism, saying it's for men and women, and why we never actually address men's issues. And like the example I'd like to give is of our position. Well, I can't really speak to you, Brian, but I speak for myself, and you can decide whether or not this is something that you agree with.
Okay.
I mean, I would say my position is very much encapsulated by what I said at the Calgary Expo. For all those you who don't know, I went to the Calgary Expo in 2015. I attended a panel with a bunch of feminists. The feminists at the panel said, why can't we have a discussion with these men's rights activists? And I stood up and said, I'm a men's rights activist. Would you like to have a discussion with me? Herp-a-derp-a-derp. And then I explained why I didn't like feminism. And I said it because it defines women as victims, and it doesn't look at the situation for men. So it doesn't look at how men are harmed. It seemed like we had a nice back and forth, and then I got kicked out the next day.
Yep.
I got kicked out, banned from that convention, and every convention that company put on, which was most of them in Western Canada. And then we got stalked by some of the convention organizers and swatted. Luckily, the cop who came by was extremely reasonable and realized we were absolutely no threat. So that's the feminist response to that criticism, which was just, hey, I don't think that oppression really makes sense in the context of the relationship between men and women. So that's sort of where I am, and I think a lot of my fellow travelers are, is just in that position that maybe oppression just sort of, just muddies the waters, and maybe we shouldn't look at men oppressing women, since that's the big thing. Women oppressing men has not been a big thing, so we haven't really talked about that a lot. But anyway, maybe oppression isn't the right way to frame the relationship between the genders, historically or currently. That's where I am at. That was the basis of my criticism of feminism, and of course, they hit me with a hammer for it. And now what we're seeing, you can just hear the thunder of, like, the footsteps in the distance of something huge, right?
Yeah.
What we're hearing is there's something new coming to the table. Andrew Tate, Pearl, and all of their fellow travelers, and what they have to say, which is much more in line with the idea that women oppress men. And I'm like, I'm looking at them thundering through, like this gigantic force coming to the table, and the feminists are shitting themselves, of course. And I'm thinking, you sort of deserve this, feminists,
Yeah.
You deserve to see the mirror darkly. You deserve to see yourself in reverse. And you deserve to have to contend with that. Because God, you really, look at how you responded to a reasonable critique of feminism. Now enjoy an unreasonable critique, or what I would consider to be unreasonable. Now, maybe that's the wrong way to frame it. Simplified and one-dimensional but nevertheless valid. Because if there's going to be feminism at the table, then there should be all of the people who think that women oppress men at the table. I'm happy. I'm fine with that. You know what? I'm fine with that. I can see both positions. I disagree with both. I think they both should be at the table. And as society contends with both of those positions, maybe the position that oppression isn't the right way to frame the position, the relationship between the genders, maybe that position will start to look more attractive and less like you want to hit it with a hammer. Mm-hmm. So, I wash my hands of all of it. Anyway, the feminist I was arguing with did not understand my point in the slightest.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I was just going to say that I think that there is a simple reason as to why this feminist and probably all feminists would make the terrible miscalculation in lumping someone like Cassie J in with someone like Andrew Tate or Pearl. It's basically the same reason they lump Jordan Peterson in with Andrew Tate and Pearl. It's because they don't agree with them, and they're just going to lump everybody under the same umbrella and call them all misogynists, and no amount of nuance is going to change that. That's why they're doing it. It's like you're dealing with people who are just plain hostile unless you agree, and not just agree with them, but you have to agree and you have to supplicate to them. You have to get down and prostrate yourself because there's only one answer and they have it. That's just the way it is. Like, when you told me, oh, they're saying that she's just like Cassie J is just like Pearl and Andrew Tate. It's like, yeah, of course, yeah, that's what they do.
No, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, so like, I know that there is some, and I will say in defense, I don't know about Tate because I don't really watch his content much, but in defense of Pearl, I think that her point is what my point would be, which is it's not necessarily. I don't think Pearl would say that women oppress men. I wouldn't say that, but I would say that there are systemic things in place that women can use to destroy men. And the fact that those things exist is the problem. Like, this is the reason why, for example, we're going to be talking about the Lotus Eaters, but not this video. There was another video that I think, like, the Distributist was on. I don't watch him, but I've heard of him before. And he was basically talking about how, men just, here's some stuff that you need so you can, like, find a woman. And they were just putting it out there. And I was like, this is useless. Like, all kinds of dating advice can be found. None of that matters if a woman can just destroy a man with the law. If she can just use the state to ruin him. If she can just take his kids from him. If she can make him pay for a child that doesn't belong to him, that is not his. None of these other things about picking up women matters. If there's all of this legal, political stuff that can be weaponized against men. You don't even, like, they're a MGTOW, right? They go, like, full-on monk mode, and they're like, well, I'm not... You can still be accused by a woman. Have you guys not been paying attention? People who have never met women have been accused by women. I mean, Mark Pearson was accused by Sawad Fares, I can say that because I'm in the States, who was like an actress on Game of Thrones, of sexual assault in a public place in a context that was literally impossible. And he still had to go through the ringer. So, like, the issue is that no amount of game, no amount of riz is going to save you. The problems are primarily, they are legal, political, and systemic. And anyone, Cassie J, Jordan Peterson, completely reasonable people, can, like, bring up cases. They can even be feminists in their own right. Peterson is pretty feminist in a lot of ways. He's definitely gynocentric, right? But he's still the enemy because he's not pure enough. So there's, like, no amount of nuance is going to save you because these people have decided you're the enemy and that's it. You're just going to get, like, why do they even demonize people like Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate to begin with, despite the fact that those three men, I'm just giving three examples, have very little, if anything, in common at all. It's because they're all men outside of the approved list of people, and so they're all monsters. They've been put into black categories, partly because they're men, partly because they're straight, partly because they're cis, but mostly because they're men who disagree with them. And now they can just connect anyone they want to those people. That's how it works. You're not dealing with logic. You're just dealing with a machine that just makes hatred. And so I completely support the stuff that Pearl does, because she just, what she's saying, I don't disagree with. I think it's true. I think there are systemic things that affect men. I think that women, whether they want to or not, can use it. And I think there's a lot of reasons why this makes the current, like, say, landscape of relationships and marriage and family and children completely, like, unusable. And the feminists don't even know the consequences of what they're supporting. Like, they literally don't know what the damage is going to be, because they're so caught up in their own, reflection, that they can't see, like, the long-term effects. And they don't really, I think that a lot of them don't even care about what the long-term effects are. They're not just misandrous.
It's really simple.
They're nihilist.
It's really simple. Whatever you define as being in opposition to women will eventually be destroyed by men.
Yeah.
If you say our society is in opposition to women, eventually it will be destroyed by men. It may not be physically destroyed. Men may just simply cease to invest in it and move on.
Yeah.
Because you've just told them that it's immoral in a way that strikes down to the deepest heart of our sense of morality. Why would they continue to pledge allegiance to something like that? Why would they continue to keep running it? Why would they continue to see that their actions in creating a society that is apparently a horrible, oppressive patriarchy is good? The answer is they don't. And they're going to stop because you told them to. Like, feminists are literally saying, men, stop making this society.
Yeah.
And men are going to stop. And then feminists are going to be like, well, why did you stop, men?
Yeah.
And it's like, because you told them to.
You have to embrace the paradoxes.
Yeah, okay, okay. My point is that they deserve a movement of people, and I don't necessarily agree with everything Pearl has said, because I have followed her on Twitter, and some of that stuff is, I'm like, boy, you love throwing rocks at hornets' nests.
I think that's what it is. I think she just likes to and I there's another thing too, is that, like, there is a factor, and specifically with Twitter monetization. I think that maybe this is just a tactic for Pearl to get, like, more Twitter bucks. It's possible. I know it's a little cynical, because I do think that if she really wanted to do that, she would probably say something more popular. But that might be part of it. So. Mm-hmm.
But regardless, whatever it is, the shallow interpretation that women oppress men, feminists deserve to have to contend with it. Mm-hmm. And they deserve to have to contend with it being large and powerful and highly influential, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And I would say it's shallow because there's reasons why I would say it's shallow. Mm-hmm. I think that it's something that needs to be said. It's something that needs to expand the Overton window.
Agreed. And I think that, like, it could be a useful tactic, because you would be forced to confront the idea that men oppress women if you confront the
exactly. You will be forced to confront the ideas be a true perspective of history and society. Mm-hmm. If you're forced to confront people who believe that, who believe the opposite of feminism. Yes. But what I wanted to get at is there's feminism, which believes that men oppress women, that men are to blame for society, and society is built for their benefit. And then there are people who believe that women oppress men, society is built for the benefit of women, and I mean entirely for the benefit of women. And I can see that, again, I could see that argument. I think that society is built to benefit women when it comes to provision and protection. Mm-hmm. But I think it also does come at a sacrifice that women have to make. And I can define that because it's new. Let's say it's the real version of the word nuanced.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of time to get into. But so there's that side, that society is constructed for women's benefit at the expense of men. I would say that there is a really good argument for that. Mm-hmm. But both of those brought to the table so that we can start recognizing the argument that maybe nobody is ultimately benefiting. Maybe nobody is ultimately to blame. Maybe this is a dynamic we have constructed for each other. And in fact, maybe feminism is these men on top justifying their exploitation of other men.
Yeah.
You know, maybe something like that. So we never escape each other. It's a dynamic, and it has been throughout all of human history. There's no point saying men are more to blame or women are more to blame. The point is to identify places where men can take responsibility, women can take responsibility to improve everything overall. You know, and I would like to see that.
That would where we would. That's where we want to land, but we can't
yes,
get
it's
there.
where we want to land.
Yes, where we want to land. We can't get there now because too many people are not willing to accept the possibility that they're wrong about the way the world is, and that's the thing that I think. Well, I don't. Okay, before we get into, because I want to get into the video. Before we get into the video, though, first of all, I want to give a shout out to the Rumble gang. So if you're not over on Rumble, you should be following us. I have custom gifts. I figured out how to put in custom gifts over on Rumble. Right now, I don't have many. I'm going to be adding some more that are more badgery when I get, you know, like figure out how to do it. But yeah, go on Rumble and follow us there. HB Radio at rumble.com. And I did get a couple of super chats. Let me put Badger Chan on the screen here so I can read them. So I got one from Catcall Time for $5. And Catcall Time says, I shall catcall women and say stuff like, you look like shit every day, or you look like your don't take accountability for your choices. Thank you, Catcall Time. Appreciate it. And then we got another super chat from He's John Cena, Richard Bier for $5. Oh, that's wrong. Sorry, that was the wrong one. It's this one.
And his name is John Cena.
Sometimes I press the wrong button. I apologize. And he says, if you strike me down now, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Allison to the Mary Sue. And we're still here. We're still here. I don't know how well the Mary Sue is doing. I know they still exist. But,
no, it still exists. It still exists because I had to pay them like $3,000 last year.
Oh shit. Well, that'll pay. That'll pay the salaries of like 3 writers for like.
No, for the rest of their lives because they don't probably pay them $1 a day.
Yeah, no, they probably don't pay them shit.
Okay, but like honestly, they still exist. You know what? I don't even think the person who sent me that freaking letter even knew a thing about what happened. Mm-hmm. Like it's just doesn't. It's not relevant to them. They do not care.
Yeah.
And it just disappeared into the wastes of crony capitalist corporate culture. Anyway, but yeah, that was but I survived.
Yeah, you're still here. I'm still standing better than I ever did. Looking like a true survivor. Okay.
I'm still standing and I'm still being utterly reasonable.
Perhaps too reasonable considering who you're dealing with. But let's get into the video. So this video is from a few weeks ago. And it's called The Dichotomy of the Sexes with Philip Tanzer. So I want to give you a little background on... It's Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, and Philip Tanzer. So Philip Tanzer, we met him in 2016. He came to the ICMI in London, and he was very new to the movement. At the time, he considered himself like more of an egalitarian equalist. You know, usually like that is like the first step when you're moving towards men's rights. You're like, well, I don't hate women or anything, or I still think feminism is cool and all. And I get it. I understand. I went through that too. It's fine. No big deal. I like Philip Tanzer. I think he's a really nice guy. He used to do gay porn. Just for the record, he used to, and then he like stopped, and he has like a barbershop in Scotland. But he's originally from Germany. Big story, weird story, okay? Very big fan of the X-Men. And I've had him on the show a couple times as a guest. Like, I could think of at least 3 or 4 times that he's been on our show. And you can look it up in our Badger live stream. So, not an enemy of mine or anything like that. If anything, the only criticism I ever had of Philip Tanzer is that he's too nice. And I try to be nice, but I have my limits. I think sometimes you have to recognize evil, and I think that like being nice is just not conducive to that. But that's the only criticism I have, is that he's too nice, so he can take it however he wants. Since all of that, he has married a woman, and he's lives in Scotland, and I think he's trying to start a family, or he may have already started one. I don't really know. And so because he's already in the sort of, I guess you could say, Carl's neck of the woods, he's come on the Lotus Eaters a couple times to either be a guest commentator, because sometimes they have like a panel of guys, like I mentioned the Distributist before. Aiden Paladin has also been on there. I don't remember her real name, but I met Aiden a couple times as well. And she's also been on the show. So in this discussion, Philip and Carl are sitting down and they're talking about the video's called The Dichotomy of the Sexes, but it begins with a conversation about the current state of the men's movement, at least as of 2 weeks ago. So we're going to start with the intro, and then I'm going to go into some time codes that one of our patrons clued me into. So like if you're in our Discord and there's a video that you want us to respond to, but maybe it's a little bit long in the tooth, you know, if you can save me some time by going through and finding time codes of moments that you want me to respond to that we can do a show on, it would be super helpful, because some of these longer videos, like this one's like an hour and a half, it would just take me forever to go through and like look for all the stuff that annoys me, and I'd probably end up like marking everything. So anyway, let's play the intro so you guys have a sense of what this is about. And Carl, don't ding us for this. You know, we're still cool. I don't think he will though. So
well, you know, like I mean, if somebody has an issue, they should bring it up so we can address it. Like,
no, I
honestly,
mean, bring it up. I'm talking about.
I don't agree with the assessment that we are in any way less relevant than we were.
No, I
In fact,
agree.
I think we're
I
becoming
agree.
more relevant.
I think it's actually the result of something else. I think Carl's distracted by other things, like, you know,
Yeah,
immigration and other. Nah, but I mean, it is fair enough, but I think it is a blind spot, because I think if you're not addressing the issue of men, then nothing else matters. Everything else falls apart. Like, I mean, the world's made up of men and women. That's all. That's at the end of the day. That's where it begins. To me, that's step one. Like, you can't address government shit. You can't address the globalists. You can't address the commies. You can't address those things if you don't address men and women first. So, all right, let's start the video.
Hi, folks. I'm joined by men's rights activist and conservative activist Philip Tanzer to discuss the unfortunate failure, it appears, of the men's rights movement. Because it seems to have lost its energy. And
I'm pausing it there. In case, Alice, if you want to say something, you can just jump in. I'll play some more. He's just sort of setting the table.
You know, I get where he's coming from, to be quite honest. Like, the thing is that the energy has moved from the people who are talking, well, let's have an honest look at the relationship between the genders and the dynamics throughout history. And it's moved more, again, towards what I would consider to be the true anti-feminists, who believe that much closer along the lines of women oppress men. Much more simply, women have the power, men don't, period.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you want to say, if you don't want to use the term oppression, they think that without any kind of deeper understanding, society is constructed for women's benefit at the expense of men. And that's the exact opposite of the feminist opinion. And maybe this is just what has to happen. They have to come to the table. They have to start presenting this opinion to people and having it have more and more power and more influence, and it going out further and further, because otherwise feminists and the people who agree with them, which is a lot of people, will never actually start looking at what they are what they actually are putting out into the world and its real effects. You know? So I'm starting to realize that this is probably a necessary process, but to say that men's rights activists or men's issues enthusiasts or whatever, and incidentally, like, if you look at it in terms of men actually having services, like, it's better now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, there's definitely progress being made.
There's progress being made on the ground. It's small, but
I think more importantly, the language is changing. There's been some examples of things like the Me Too movement. In some ways, it's more powerful than it ever has been in terms of it being a political weapon. See Russell Brand. But it's also created a lot more skepticism. It's actually kind of an interesting thing how things are sort of, you know, flipping. But go ahead.
So this idea that if you look at the on the ground services, they're getting better. Like the dialogue is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
The energy has definitely moved more towards an extreme position when it comes to the relationship between men and women in favor of women having the power. I would agree with that. I think Andrew Tate would agree with that. Even if he believes that it's still men's responsibility to, I don't know, exude masculine miasma and influence the world that way, like to exude the masculine pheromone and thus influence the behavior of those around in the herd and blah blah and whatever it is he thinks that's going to happen. But so I think it's gone more to the radical and even more like I know that, you know, for a time it was Paul Elam who was the real radical, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's even more than or I think Andrew Tate is probably even further into being seen as radical, but I would also say that Andrew,
but I don't think he is.
Andrew Tate is really, he's not a very deep thinker. I'll put it that way.
I agree, 100%. I think that Tate is a useful straw man for the media. That's why they center him and they prop him up. And I'm sure Tate thinks that it's all because he's the top G, but like honestly, he's mostly just cringe. But like Pearl, I think is something that they don't know. That's why I don't think that Pearl and Tate are the same. I mean, Pearl supports him or whatever, but I think they're coming. No, I know you're not saying that, but I'm just saying in case somebody wanted to say that. I think that it is different because Pearl is specifically the thing that I think that makes Pearl special is that she goes after women. She is going after tradcons right now because she is trying to. She started this, she kicked a hornet's nest with the vasectomy thing, which I thought was, again, I think that she's all about like, let's talk about this thing nobody wants to talk about. And then she's like, let's wait.
Yeah, that's the feeling that I get.
Yeah, that's what I know. That's what I think. I think that's what I really think it is. She's like, what's the thing nobody wants to talk about? Oh, we're going to talk about that.
She's got to touch all the sacred cows.
Yeah, like she said, maybe
she's in the field with all the cows, and she's like, I got to touch them all.
Yeah, like when she says maybe women shouldn't vote, and then people are like, oh my God, how can you? It's like, yeah, I think we should talk about that. and I don't disagree. I'm like, well, this is a good point. So I see it as more like she's forcing the conversation and she has the audience to do it. And I think that's what keeps her relevant. I don't think Tate adds much to that. I mean, I don't think he's been talking much anymore anyway. I don't think he's been in the news much. I think that, he's kind of like fallen back. But what I think
with the Romanian knob.
Yeah, but what I think that Carl is referring to is more than that, like we have been less. Maybe this is something that Philip told him. So I don't know where he's getting this from because we've been making content consistently for 10 years. That's never stopped. Paul, he was doing work and then he slowed down and now he's coming back and he's got XY crew and I've had him on my show and I hung out with Paul like a couple weeks ago. We had lunch together. He's still very active. He's always been, I wouldn't even say radical, but he doesn't shy away from saying what is on his mind. I think that's good. I think there's been more vocal voices in the MGTOW community, the incels. I mean, I don't consider the incels part of the manosphere, but they do, so I'm just gonna put it out there. It's been like a growing conversation. But what has changed is because of COVID, we haven't been able to host ICMIs since 2019. And the 2019 ICMI was the biggest one yet. It was easily the biggest one yet. And they've only been growing. It's just that the COVID thing kind of, slowed things down and we've been doing some online stuff. And this year we're doing it in, was it Delhi? Or it's in India, right? I'm not going to India.
I think, yeah.
It's in New Delhi, yeah. I'm not going there, but I'm supposed to be like doing a call, a Zoom call to the, our buddies down in India. And that the men's movement is huge there. So like, I don't think it's slowing down, but I think that the COVID thing makes it look like it because everybody sort of stopped doing stuff for a little while. I won't say that it's an unfair assessment. I just think it's inaccurate. So what does ICMI stand for? International Conference on Men's Issues.
How many time codes do you have? I do have something I'd like to say.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, I do have something I'd like to say to this.
But I want to finish the intro first, but go ahead.
There was a series that I did called Crossing, was basically about crossing the chasm.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about adoption of an idea, adoption of a technology, and how it tends to permeate through the population. So usually you have the first adopters, and they grab onto it because it's interesting, or they figure out things that they can use this technology for. In our case, in the men's issues case, what we're talking about is an idea that's very new. It's very new. The idea that society is not constructed for the benefit of men at the expense of women, that women are not defined as victims. That's very unusual, right? Throughout all of most cultures have a narrative of women's victimhood and weakness. We've never actually looked at that and said, hey, is that true? So this is a very new idea. And you're going to see that only a few type of people are really interested in something that's very new. So you can see that with, I don't know, the earth is round. You can see that with washing your hands, like surgeons washing their hands. So it takes a while for a new idea and a new technology to permeate through the population.
Yeah.
And it starts with those first adopters who are open to new things and how to apply new things, or how to investigate, or they want to investigate new things. And then there's this huge chasm between the first adopters and what they call the early majority, which is people who are okay with something new, but they want to know how it improves their life first. And they want to see other people using it. They want social proof. And the men's rights movement right now, and has been since I've been alive, and maybe even till I'm dead, at the point where I'm dead, is at that first adopter stage. We're at the chasm. So we're on the other side of the chasm. The rest of society is on the opposite side of the chasm that we're on. And in order to get over that chasm, there is only one thing that will do it. And that's pain. The way that it was described in the book is, I mean, if you're not somebody who's just naturally interested in new ideas and fascinated by wherever your intellect takes you, you're not going to be part of the first adopters. You're just not. It's just, you don't get anything out of it. You don't get the thrill of the new. That's what first adopters are. And with the men's rights movement, either we're people who have an interest in all of these new ideas and these new ways of looking at gender and sex, or there are people who have been forced over the chasm through extreme amounts of pain. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right, Brian?
Yeah.
The men who've lost their children, the male victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, the Johnny Depps of the world, where I don't know if he is across the chasm, but he probably is aware that it exists. So the point is that the rest of society is not going to cross that chasm until a sufficient amount of pain is applied. And the pain is going to come from the how this particular narrative falls out in terms of, well, what happens as a result of believing that men have constructed society as for their own benefit at the expense of women, as a result of condemning masculinity as toxic and harmful to women, basically, as a result of condemning all of the masculine virtues, as a result of destroying the relationship between men and women by forcing men to try to sell themselves through one of the most unbelievably nasty anti-male advertising campaigns in history. Like society is constantly telling women that being a mother is oppression, that housework is onerous, like slave labor, that being a wife is losing your autonomy, and just, we are constantly telling women that the worst thing they can be is a wife and mother, right? We are, and that marrying men is like a horrible loss to them. So men have to push through this anti-male rhetoric even to get to the point of starting a relationship with a woman. So a woman starts with all of this anti-male belief system that a man then has to compensate for, even to start the process of family formation. You know, that's another thing that we're suffering under. And until the pain of all of this becomes great enough, people are going to remain on the other side of the chasm. So when you talk about men's rights losing steam or men's issues losing steam, what does that actually mean? Yeah, we've probably gone to and we've picked up all of the first adopters that we can. But on the other hand, we can't convince the rest of society to just start recognizing these problems, to start recognizing that you cannot condemn masculinity in perpetuity and expect to have your society be afforded the benefit of its virtues. You can't ignore the sacrifices men make for society in perpetuity and expect those sacrifices to continue. You can't unsell men and expect family formation to happen. I mean, until those things that they're doing really start to bite them in the ass and cause the necessary amount of pain, they're not going to go over the chasm. So we're here and we're keeping the message alive and we're telling them, yeah, this is a solution to your problem. This is a solution to your pain. All we have to do is continue to do that, and maybe I'll have to hand the torch over to someone else when I'm old, before I die, hopefully. And we just keep at that until the pain is sufficient that they realize they have to do something new. That the value proposition that we bring with what we have is sufficient. Like, they have enough pain that they're ready to look and say, hey, yeah, you know what? We probably should do that. That's the only thing that's going to happen. And I said this back in 2018. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's going to sell men's rights is sufficient amount of social pain. And it's coming. It's here in many cases.
It's here, yeah. There has to be suffering because we've been warning people for a while. And it's not, you know, I mean, there's not much we can do except like equip the people who watch us to protect themselves, because you're right. I mean, they're just gonna do this until like the suffering becomes
unbearable,
where you can't blame it on men anymore, and it becomes unbearable. You just have to like do what's necessary, and that's gonna be pretty soon. Like, and we are fighting a battle. You guys have to understand that we're fighting against a narrative that's like been here far before we were ever born. So we're not expecting to like turn things over in our lifetime. But maybe we can get the ball rolling in the right direction. Otherwise, you know, we'll just go back to the Stone Age, and maybe men will be like, we're going to have to oppress women. Like, this is the only way we're going to have to, you know, I mean, I don't know. But I do think, I honestly do have some optimism. I think people are, you know, involved in this. I want to mention again with Pearl. Another thing I give her credit for, and I mentioned this on the show before, she did talk to Paul Elam and do a stream with Paul Elam, and she did one with Janice Fiamengo. So she's talking to the right people. I'm still waiting to hear from her on coming here, but I was told that she would come here. So, you know, is Pearl like as knowledgeable on this as we are? Probably not, but it doesn't matter. If she's able to get the voice out there, if she's able to get the talking points out there, it's fine by me. I don't care if it's triggering to people. But like, you know, we're dealing with people who have basically they're acting in a way that seems like they hate humanity itself. So why not just talk in their language and talk past them at somebody who will listen and be reasonable? So,
well, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a little bit more.
All right.
We're not fighting that narrative. That narrative is going to destroy itself. Mm-hmm. What we're doing is keeping alive an understanding of why it's destroying itself.
Yeah.
And eventually there'll be so much pain that they'll have to step back and say, we got to do something different. Either that or the whole society implodes and we never recover. But you know what? Either way, it's out of our hands. We did what we could. We fought against the dying of the light. We held aloft the answer to the problem for as long as we could. And we fought the good fight against ignorance and self deception. And you know, that's what matters. That's what matters, is that we are at this side of the chasm, keeping the fires alight, so that whenever the other side of the chasm, the people on the other side of the chasm, realize, hey, it really sucks here, they'll know where to go.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, I want to play the rest of the introduction, so let's play some more of this, and then we'll get into the time code.
It doesn't look like it's going to achieve the goals it set for itself, which I'm not happy to say, I have to say.
That is a black pill intro. I will try to sprinkle a couple of white pills into it.
Please.
So yeah, I've been a men's rights activist now for, oh my God, when did we see each other at the Men's International Conference?
2017, I think it was.
17. Oh my God.
It's been
2016. 2017, we were in Australia. I'm just clarifying. 2016, the UK. 2017, Australia. 2018, the UK. 2019, Chicago. And then everything else was online.
It's been a while.
And every ICMI was bigger than the last one. I will also add. Lots of good guests.
A while, yeah. So I've been a men's rights activist now for quite a few years, and I think when I joined it, that was obviously pre-COVID, and there was still quite a lot of energy there. Like there were annual meetings, conventions, and they invited you, which was quite a step up for the International Conference on Men's Issues, because you were not per se a men's rights activist. You were a social commentator and quite famous and well known. And so there was something good going on, and I would say then COVID happened. And that happened obviously to so many parts of society that just, it took a certain energy out of movements, out of events and things like that.
All right, I'm going to go to so that's sort of like his reasoning. I don't think there's a whole lot more here. So I'll go to the first talking.
I can understand that kind of feeling.
I don't think it's true though.
But the thing is that things evolve and change. I find it interesting that, I was responsible for organizing the pre-COVID ICMI, the International Conference on Men's Issues. And yes, he's right. COVID took the sales out, because specifically I remember in early 2000, I was arranging to get another venue for the next, we were going to do a convention that was sort of more... Oh, the
BadgerCon thing.
Yeah, the BadgerCon. We wanted to do something that was not quite as academic and incorporated more, on the Gamergate end.
The culture stuff, right?
Yeah, just the culture stuff, because the ICMI 2019 also incorporated the culture commentary, but I wanted to get more of the creators,
Oh, okay.
People who are the storytellers, get them more involved. And unfortunately, I remember after we had negotiated an actual venue for the event, I had to call them up and I had to cancel it because I was looking at what was happening with COVID, the COOF. And all of the lockdowns, and I was like, well,
so
I don't
it wasn't
think
the year you said, the year 2000. You mean 2020 then?
2020, yeah,
Okay,
2020.
2020, okay.
It was actually really disappointing to me, to be honest. But I was going to go ahead with another event like ICMI 2000. In fact, at one point, ICMI 2000, I think 21 would have been in conjunction with what I was envisioning, and yeah, it didn't happen because of COOF. And I don't think you can blame anybody in the men's rights issue.
No, you can't. But it's not the COOF. It's the government response to the COOF. And specifically, now we're at a point where I don't know if we can go to Canada or if people can come here because they're going to do the COOF thing all over again. And,
but the problem now with travel is, are they going to do something crazy?
Yeah.
Well, there's always this niggling fear in the back of your head about, what are they going to spring? And so it's really difficult to organize anything, especially if you're not a huge corporation or government entity.
Yeah, we just went from pretty free to absolutely questioning our freedom in the span of a couple of years. And now we don't know if what's safe to do or what's not. And it's very, I'm probably just as energetic about this as I ever have been. But
Maybe
it's
I'm a
really
bit less,
just
but-
yeah, you might be a bit demoralized, but like I think that because I know that that's the intention, and I'm not saying it's targeting us specifically, because I think this took the wind out of sails for a lot of people trying to do a lot of different kinds of organizing. Unless, of course,
Yeah.
you're Antifa or Black Lives Matter or some kind of like a climate activist that wants to glue their hand to a painting of Mona Lisa, in which case then you're totally fine. But if you're a men's rights activist, then
before,
What?
even before we had
Yeah.
to deal with a lot of
bomb
difficulty
threats
finding-
and like people, for sure.
and people canceling venues and all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like honestly, the COOF thing, what it did was it put that anxiety that men's issues advocates always faced, and it made it something that everybody faces now.
Yeah.
And that really speaks to what I'm talking about with the pain thing. Like the COOF. I know there's a lot of conspiracy talk about, globalists and top down. Honestly, I think the COOF is basically a form of mass hysteria. Like the fear enabled an authoritarian response, but it was the fear, and the fear comes from a feminine impulse. Like that is like I don't want to say toxic femininity because I hate that word in conjunction with people's gender identities. It is a kind of primitive, immature feminine that reacts with an extreme response to a fierce stimulus. So it was a very feminine. It was driven by women, and I think that was in part. Like this belief that you sacrifice freedom for safety, and you sacrifice other people's freedoms for your safety. That's feminine. And even the people on the other side of the argument recognized it. Like the feminists that I spoke to, they said that the world should be, and they regarded all of the measures in relation to the COOF as being a move towards a more feminine morality and a more feminine way of approaching social interaction. So they would admit that. They would say that this is good because it's feminine. And I'm like, so what we experienced was like a spasm of excessive, unchecked femininity, and that was the response to the COOF. That desire for security and safety over freedom. That willingness to sacrifice safety and security for freedom. And I remember people can argue this in the comments, and I'm not saying that that's like femininity. That is like straight femininity, but it is femininity that is not courageous. It's femininity that's really up its own ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because there can be courageous femininity, but that's cowardly femininity.
Yep.
And that's when we say the future is feminine and we exclude the masculine as at least a means by which women understand that there's something greater than themselves. And I'm not saying that the feminine doesn't also do the same for men, because it does. When we exclude that, what we end up with is the cowardly feminine as opposed to the courageous feminine. And that's what we're experiencing. We're experiencing the feminine that is unaccountable to nobody. And it's not a pretty sight.
Yep.
And like I said, a lot of the people on the other side of the aisle would say that yes, the government response to COVID was the transcendence of the feminine over the masculine, and that we should have more of it.
Oh
Like,
yeah, they're all about that. Well, it's an excuse. It comes down to it being feminism is a statist ideology, and unfortunately, most people are down with that. Most people, like, not it's not even. Most people are okay with it, and except for people like me, and you. I mean, I think that it's just working out the way they want, but it's.
And they would say
in the short term, at least.
The way they would frame it is that the response to COVID was compassionate and kind and caring, and it was kind of like this.
I mean, do you want Nana to die?
Yeah, this response of being truly caring for people and making sure that they're okay and telling them what to do for their best interests.
Yeah.
And they would honestly, like 100%, if you frame it that way, they'd say, oh yeah, that is totally feminine, caring for people, being compassionate, taking care of them, making sure that they get the medicine that they need, even if they don't want it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a compassionate, feminine approach. And that's exactly how they framed it. And they're right. Except it's not good.
Works. It works.
Okay,
by the way,
let's
guys,
keep going.
smash like or your grandma's gonna die. So if you love your grandma, slash like. Or if you love your grandpa, smash like 3 times. Because if you smash it twice, you'll unlike it. So do it 3 times. All right, let's
And
play
send
some.
me super chows.
Yeah, send us super chat.
Feedback.com/justice.
I did get 2, but that was
Just
from
the 2.
before. Yeah, send it.
Yeah, that's from before. Send new ones
All right,
so we can read
let's-
them.
Let's play some more of this.
Well, absolutely, and this is why they're so afraid of someone like Andrew Tate, who takes a completely opposite view on feminism and women. But what's worse is that the conservatives don't tend to like Andrew Tate because he doesn't promote a healthy masculine view. He promotes quite a nihilistic and pseudo-masculine view.
I can't comment on that because I don't follow him enough.
I've seen enough of his clips to understand the sort of thing they're talking about.
Okay.
And because I'm not a regular viewer of his, but he essentially is taking the role of kind of a bandit, where he's like, look, just get what you can for you because the system is rigged against you, and it will do everything it can to crush you. The Matrix, he calls it, which is not necessarily an inaccurate way of framing it, is essentially trying to make you into a slave of the system. It has its clients of power, which are the women of the system. You are to be one of the serfs of the power, and you're going to spend your life laboring for someone else's gain. And so get out of that as much as you can, get as much wealth and prestige as you can. But this is not, it fundamentally lacks the essence of what it is to be a man, which is to be dignified and reliable and have people rely upon you. Instead, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like what a bandit would do, which is why he had to worry about his girls leaving his compound rather than worrying about stopping too many women making advances on him, right?
So the person who gave me this clip said, Sargon starts pulling out the real man bullshit when he really means good boy. So I don't know, maybe the person who wrote this disagrees with that.
I think he's right. I think Sargon's right here. He maybe not right all the way through here, but he's right. Andrew Tate. Yeah, I think he specifically said Andrew Tate is like the reverse of feminist.
Yeah, he's like a bandit. Well,
no. Listen to the beginning. Go to the beginning and listen, because I'm pretty sure he said. Go to the beginning of this segment. I'm not thinking honestly. Okay, keep going. Here we go.
Wait, let me go a little bit.
Well, absolutely, and this is why they're so afraid of someone like Andrew Tate, who takes a completely opposite view on feminism and women. But what's worse is that the conservatives don't tend to like Andrew Tate because he doesn't promote.
Okay, so who takes the opposite view? Because this section we're missing a little bit of context. So maybe go a couple, like maybe 20 seconds before. So yeah.
Okay, right here.
And gender segregated education that they want to do with exclusive responsibility and blame on the part of the boys and no responsibility at all on the part of the girls.
Yeah.
Which is what's been going on for women forever now, but they're trying to get them younger and younger and younger, potentially because they see that some young people, especially boys, are waking up.
Well, absolutely, and this is why they're so afraid of someone like Andrew Tate.
Okay, so they were talking about feminists,
Yeah.
So she's pointing out that Andrew Tate, like I did, Andrew Tate is saying the opposite. And you know, I know that everybody's like, "Oh, Andrew Tate." I honestly think that Andrew Tate needs to come to the table because
it's the only way. I mean,
it's the only way.
They called him.
There needs to be a counterpoint to feminism.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a counterpoint to blaming men for society, and that counterpoint needs to be blaming women. And then maybe where we're at, and I think you agreed with this, that maybe it's all a freaking dynamic. We can start talking from that perspective, so we can start fixing things.
Yeah, it might have to be the case, but I think Andrew Tate is gynocentric. Like that, my belief is that he may be very critical of feminism, but I think that he is still very gynocentric.
I'm gonna blow your mind.
He definitely puts women, like his success with women is like how he measures his worth as a man, and and I think that is, I think that's small. I think that is small. But go ahead, Alice.
Okay. Feminism is patriarchal.
Well, yeah, of course.
Andrew Tate is gynocentric. And the reason why I say feminism is patriarchal is because feminism is the way that I can see that it's structured is it talks about smashing patriarchy. But at the end of the day, when I talk to feminists, they have absolutely nothing in the way of tangible plans to escape this horrible oppressive slavery of women. I'm like, every group of slaves that didn't completely buy into the whole system had some kind of means of fighting against it. Like, now some systems of slavery were a little bit like they had their own little escape valve, like Roman slavery. You could buy your way out or you could marry your way out. But if you look at something like slavery in the Old South, you had the Underground Railroad, right? You had people who opposed it and were trying to get them physically out of it. You don't have that with feminists. There's no attempt to escape this horrible patriarchy or to establish anything realistically female only. Like I've talked to the lesbian separatists, at least the ones who talk to me, and they have no plan for how to replace all of the utilities that men provide are majority male with female utilities. They have no plan for that. They have absolutely no plan. Every single subjugated people and that was not somehow subsumed by some kind of benefit to themselves in the greater culture wanted to be free. They wanted their own homeland. They wanted to establish themselves. And yet women, feminists, are pathologically incapable of even having that impulse. And when I realized that, and it was actually when I watched Barbie that I realized that this occurred to me. Because she's whining about patriarchy, but in the end, what does she do? She appeals to the great patriarch for a benefit, a boon. You know, please bless me, great patriarch. And I realized from all that, and the fact that this was honestly presented as feminist. Like, this whole movie was presented as feminist. Like, Greta's like, oh yeah, this is feminist. So feminist. I'm like, really? Because when I look at this in terms of a hero's journey, or at storytelling, what you have told me is that while women should be allowed to talk about the nail, it doesn't matter if the nail is ever removed. What matters is that they get to talk about how the nail makes them feel. So you've established patriarchy as some horrible oppression of women, but you're not talking about ending it. You're just talking about how it's a horrible oppression of women. It's just so horrible. It's so awful. But okay, so let's end it. No. It's not about ending patriarchy. It's about how patriarchy makes me feel. And I'm like, this is it. This is the entirety of feminism. Yeah. It's not about ending patriarchy. It's about how patriarchy makes them feel. And that is not the attitude of any group of people that's truly oppressed.
Of course not.
That is not the attitude of someone who's being killed by a nail in their head. It's the attitude of someone who is mildly inconvenienced by the existence of this thing they're complaining about. Because anybody who is deeply harmed wants it done. I mean, God, if you have a cracked tooth, do you not want it out of your mouth? You know? Because of the frickin' pain of it. And yet what Barbie presented was that it's not about the patriarchy, you see, ladies. It's just not about that. No, we still want the patriarch to appeal to, you know, to ask for stuff, to bat our eyelashes at and get boons from. What it's about is how the patriarchy makes us feel. It's not about ending the patriarchy. And I'm like, that's the message that Barbie had. It's a great message. It's a great feminist message. And then I realized, hey, this is actually the entire feminist message, including the extreme rad femme position. Because none of them have any freaking clue. They don't even have they haven't even taken the first step towards what they call smashing patriarchy or being free of patriarchy or ending patriarchy. No, they don't even think about it. Like, this is the thing. They don't even think about it. They complain more. I don't even want to say more. The word more doesn't even capture it. Complaining about patriarchy is encompasses their entire attitude towards patriarchy. There is absolutely nothing left for getting away from this horrible thing that oppresses them. So they spend all of their time complaining about it and none of their time attempting to get away from it. Because they don't want to. They know the deal that they got.
Yep. It is super useful.
And so again, it is not about the patriarchy. It's not about, that movie, that video. It's not about the nail.
Yeah,
I don't know how many people have watched it, but it's about a woman with a nail in her head and her husband is there and she's like, if I could just take the nail out, and she's like, it's not about the nail. It's about how I feel this oppressive spiky pain in my head, and it's really getting me down and making me depressed, and I feel depressed, and I think I'd really like to get like a pint of ice cream and just sit here and try to deal with these feelings. And he's like, can I just take the nail out of your head? Because if I get rid of it, it probably feel. No, it's not about the nail. You don't understand me. This is exactly what feminism and patriarchy is. Mm-hmm. It's not about the patriarchy. It's about how it makes me feel.
Yep.
And it's like, it's the
stupidest thing that we're fighting against. It's really stupid. And yet it is the dominant way that people live their life. It's like the world we live in. Like, kids are raised on this. They're raised on it. I look at this, I'm like, this is what's going to kill our society. Well, it's certainly going to hurt it. Yeah.
Yeah, unless we actually start, unless those people get across the chasm.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it. This is we have chosen the face of our destructor.
Yeah, not everyone will be saved, but there you go. All right, let's get to the next clip. Mm-hmm. Let's play it. I want to point out too that these two clips are in a section about Andrew Tate, but this is not actually about Andrew Tate. So I know the people are going to have a reaction. They're going to get all bent out of shape, but just take out that name and insert any other name. Paul Elam, Pearl, Jordan Peterson. It doesn't matter because the narrative is the same. The person is just the placeholder. Whoever it is they're throwing shit at. A few years ago, it would have been somebody else. It would have been Paul. It could have been Sage Gerard. It could have been, usually it's a man though.
Us.
It could have been us. Could have been.
Although they don't really like to acknowledge that we exist.
It was Karen for a while. I mean, it could be.
She never really got too much shit thrown at her.
Yeah, no, because it was hard. When it comes to women, they don't know how to deal with it. But when it comes to men, it's very easy because again, men are cast into a black category, as per the Cultural Revolution. You can just say he's a man, or he's a white man, or he's a straight white man, and that will do it. What is it? The books we've been through with Teal Deer, the white male system thinking. That's the purpose of calling it that. Put in a black category. Is he gonna
come back on at all?
Oh yeah, I'm sure he will. He's in the chat. He's right here. He's watching.
Teal Deer, let's do another show.
All right, Albert Nader Retro gives us $5 Canadian as a super chat and says, I hate, never mind, I'll be quiet. It's established that by this point. By the way, sorry for my remarks on your Cyberpunk 2077 video. It won't happen again. It's fine, whatever. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next clip. All right, let's keep going.
But they were cheated out of it. And I feel like the longer we wait for something truly conservative to come back, the harder the backlash will be.
Yeah.
If there's a generation of boys being obsessed with Andrew Tate and becoming potentially slightly misogynistic a-holes.
Not even slightly.
Or massively misogynistic a-holes. there is a potential of women saying, "Ooh, we don't like that."
There's not even they're saying it outright. That's why they want Andrew Tate silenced from everywhere.
Yes.
All right, let me pause it for a second. Again, I know people get emotionally triggered by the Andrew Tate thing, but let me back up, because Philip Tanzer is making an assertion that I don't think is true. He's saying that Andrew Tate is misogynistic and he's going to make his fans misogynistic. Now, if you think he is, I want you to make the case. Do you think that Andrew Tate is misogynistic? And even if you think he is, do you think he can turn all of his male followers into misogynists? Now you would have to rewire men's brains to make them think that they hate women. So, like, is this not a feminist argument that Philip is making?
Want to put it.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to look at the term misogynist. What do you really mean by that? Do you mean that these young men
is what he said? So
yeah, but from what I can see, what is it that these young men are believing? What they're believing and what is termed misogyny is this idea that they are oppressed by women. Okay? All right. That needs to come to the table now. Period.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no way out of it at this point. Young men need to be able to speak that opinion. They need to be able to come to the table and say, yeah, I'm oppressed by women. What of it? What are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to get my equality initiatives? They need to come to the table. They need to be able to say that, because this is the only way that the discourse is going to become balanced. Because we have had how many generations of girls and women saying the reverse about men without any context.
Yeah.
And I have said over and over again for the last 20 years, this narrative is not accurate. I mean, I could say I've disproved it, but it's never been proven. Like, I want people to understand this and let this sink in. The feminist assertion that society is constructed for the benefit by men, majority male decisions for the benefit of men, has never been proven. And by a scientific standard, it's actually been multiply disproven. People do not want to provide and protect for men over women. They don't want to see men benefit over women. In fact, rather the reverse. They will destroy anything that they think benefits men over women because they don't like it. They think benefits should go to women. Now, there are negatives to that, and we can get into because there's a real nuance to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But the ultimate truth is, feminist conjecture has never been proven to any standard, period. And yet boys and growing into men have been subjected to this lie. They have had this inserted into their understanding of themselves. They have been forced to swallow it, to incorporate it into their bodies and their minds for generations. Something that has never been proven to any standard whatsoever. And it, if we were really honest, has scientifically been disproven. Society does not benefit men over women. Okay, regardless who supposedly makes the overt decisions, society does not benefit men over women and never has. And that has never been proven.
Yep.
Okay. They have been subject to this lie for generations now. Generations. And now it's time for them to come to the table with their own truth and their own experience of having been subject to this lie for generations. So when you say, oh, young men are becoming misogynists, okay, yeah, I get it. But when are they going to be able to come to the table and talk about their experience of having had this inflicted on them for generations?
Mm-hmm. It's,
honestly, the interpretation here of having this lie inflicted on you is that women control society for their own benefit. And I can see that interpretation. I can see where it comes from. I don't agree with it, and I have my own arguments why it's not the case, which I will not get into here, but 100%, young men should be able to come to the table with their experience of having been subject to a malicious lie about their nature for the last few generations. Period. Otherwise, we're not going to go forward with anything.
Yep.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted
no,
you.
I was just gonna say it's funny that, like, you know, even Philip Tanzer, who's been coming to conferences and he's very outspoken and he's grown in popularity. He got like a BBC documentary made you know, about him. He was like the gateway to all this men's movement stuff for the mainstream in a lot of ways, and he still holds men to a higher standard of behavior than women. He still does it, and
that's so obnoxious.
I know, Allison. I know. I'm trying not to lose my cool, but I'm really getting tired of seeing it. I don't think men are going to become misogynist. I think that the worst thing that I can tell that Andrew Tate has done in terms of that is essentially like giving men, young men, a sense of standards, like identifying good women from bad women. I think that's probably the most charitable thing I can say, and nothing about having standards for men should be seen as misogynistic, even though it is considered misogynistic by not just feminists but women and broader society in general. But there should be no reason why men can't do it. And I'm sorry, but like, if you're not like, you know, holding women to account, which is why, again, I fully support Pearl, because at least she tries to do that, you're not going to change anything. You're not going to change anything if you don't.
No, you're going down in the ship.
Yeah, you got to start holding women's feet to the fire. The one thing that men can do, and I've thought about this since we did that show with Sam Cedar and Tim Pool, I think that really high value men, those top 1% of men, should be holding women to really high standards. And then when those women get the reality check that they're actually mid, which probably the majority of them are, then maybe they will rethink what they've been doing and get their egos in check and then figure the shit out. Because it's the only way. As long as those extremely, like, those men at the top of the hierarchy are even giving those women the time of day or sleeping with them or whatever, then it's, you know, it's just going to get worse. Unless they want a harem, which, you know, I'm sure women fantasize it about as much as men think about the Roman Empire. But I think that it's the only way. Women have to get their shit together, and the really, really high value men need to, like, you know, have some standards too.
Okay. I was just saying that so you know that I can talk, and then you could stop talking if you wish. All right, there's 2 points. Harems. If you think about it, a harem is a perfect expression of that desire to have a man who has social proof from other women. The other thing I wanted to say is that interesting how they're framing, as far as I can tell, they're framing young men believing the reverse of what has been believed about them for generations as misogyny. Right? So what are young men believing? That women hate them, that they want to exploit them, that they want to harm them emotionally, financially, physically, and they want to be able to do it and want to get away with it. What is that but the reverse of feminist patriarchy theory? So it's misogyny when boys do it. And yeah, again, it is really aggravating. Because the only people who are going to, like, you got to get over on this side of the chasm. And on this side of the chasm, we hold women to the same standard, or at least somewhat similar, or a standard, any standard, like, you know?
Yeah.
And specifically, we hold women to the standard of their actions' effect on the men and boys in their lives. And other women, for God's sake. I mean, the thing is that the feminist framework, making women who abuse other women invisible, like just giving them excuse after excuse, doesn't help women either. The average woman is not an abuser, okay? Usually. Why would giving abusive women free reign to abuse the average woman be of benefit to women? Because that's something that feminism does. by giving women constant excuses. No, it's not this woman's problem. She's just an expression of the patriarchy. Like, no, it is her problem. She needs to take responsibility for it. That's like when we talk about women's responsibility, like, I don't know how this is going to fall out. Maybe women can continue to be as promiscuous and whatever else as they want, but they're going to have to take up the slack when it comes to working the jobs that they don't like sewer work, linemen, making sure that the plumbing works and all of that stuff. If women want to take their equal responsibility, their half of responsibility for infrastructure work, then they can be as promiscuous as they want. Mm-hmm. Because that'll, they are taking their responsibility for half the society running, right? They're doing the work themselves. You either have to be willing to motivate the work or do it yourself. One or the other. I don't care, but you got to take the responsibility, ladies.
Yeah.
And I have one commentator on Twitter who says that my use of the term ladies to refer to women and men to refer to men means that I'm like a misandrist, an occult misandrist of some kind.
I saw that. Yeah.
I thought that was that. I'm still waiting on his analysis.
Spurging the fuck out. Let me get like language policing pisses me off. I'm sorry, but like, don't take us literally. Take us seriously. Okay. I think I moved on to the next bit, so let's play the next clip here. And again, do you have any thank yous to give or anything?
No, guys, once again, feedthebadger.com/support if you want us to keep going. What's really interesting is that I wanted to say this. It feels like Tim Pool is getting more, this might be completely wrong, red-pilled?
It's possible. I mean, I think, like when the pain comes,
because he was the one that said, guys on the top need to shame the women who are mid. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
he was the one who said that.
I think that if women listen to anybody, it's going to be either other women, unless those women are beneath them, or like the top tier men. Regular men at their level, even men slightly above their level, are not going to be able to do that. Like, they're just going to be able to dismiss them out of hand because they've been propagandized to do that. But if it's a really high status man that they feel entitled to the attention of, and that man turns them down, then, it's going to hurt, but it's the only way. It's like the reality check. That's what needs to happen. So, Tim Pool's been flirting with the red pill, but he won't take it. It's like you want to get a child to take their medicine, and they put it in their mouth and just hold it there, and then, that's what he's doing.
Or they eat around the banana pudding and spit it out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Albatross gives us a super chow. Thank you so much, Albatross. Let me play a little giggle for you. And he says, Tate or online personalities don't make guys misogynistic. Bad behavior from bad actors does. It's a bad assumption to make. Oh, look, JoJo's here. Let me turn on the JoJo cam. I'm gonna put JoJo on the screen. There he is. Okay. So let's play. You're not missing anything. It's just Philip's arm.
Wait.
What?
Well, I was going to say that, even bad behavior from bad actors doesn't make young men misogynist.
No.
Like, from what I've seen.
No.
Often
they're very
there's
forgiving.
a good portion. There's a good portion that think that it's their responsibility. It's something that I have to work with young men in the Discord a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, no, that's not your responsibility. How your mom treated you is not your responsibility. I mean, or it's you not to blame for it. Unfortunately, once the garbage is in your lap, you have to deal with it, and it's your responsibility not to pass it on to someone else. But you're not to blame for the fact that your mom dumped that garbage in your lap. And this is something that I have to talk to young men in the Discord about constantly. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's, there are some young men who are just like, the whole world there's a problem and I'm not the problem. And and it's like, that does happen, but in my experience, it's more common, and it might just be who we attract, which is really interesting in of itself if you think about it, because we're a men's rights podcast, and from what I can tell, the average listener is more likely to internalize this stuff in a men's rights podcast, internalize this stuff too much as their own fault than they are to recognize the fault of women in their life. And when I say fault, I mean genuinely, like they are to blame. Like there are abusive women who are engaging in abuse, and they are 100% to blame for dumping a whole bunch of trash in the lives of their husbands, their sons, etc.
Mhm.
But the guys in question, the men in question, still take too much responsibility. Like I said, in my experience, men take too much responsibility.
Yeah, they do. They do. I agree.
And it's like and maybe that's not the right way. They take too much blame. Like, because again, the garbage is your responsibility, but you're not to blame for it. And they take too much blame for it. They take continual blame for it. And like, it's hard to break them of that habit. And so I'm experiencing the exact opposite of what these individuals say about these young men, and that young men take too much blame upon themselves. Not like they need to take more. Although I have seen young men who do blame the outside circumstances a lot more. But like I said, most of the ones that I work with are you gotta help them to not blame themselves, even while taking responsibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. Okay. Play some more.
If they don't manage, if the wave gets too big, they might come to the negotiating table.
Maybe.
That would be just like with Brexit. If that, I think that would be a good outcome. If the male side, kind of like, if there's a warning from the male side, if women feel like, oh my God, what are we losing in some ways?
Well, yeah.
I doubt it. I don't think that the wisdom is still in our society to actually assess things correctly, and the media wouldn't allow it. But it would be that's my small hope.
Okay. No, I think he's saying something like what I said at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit. Go ahead.
This is something that has to happen. Like, young men need to be able to be heard about this, and they deserve it, honestly. Like, they've been subject to this ghastly narrative that has no validity for a long time now, and it's time for them to be heard on their experience of being subject to it.
Yep.
You know, this is social abuse, and now the group of people that's being socially abused is talking back. And it has to happen. I'm sorry, ladies. You've had the mic for however many years, and you've been able to push this narrative that has no validity, no evidentiary. It's like it is not proven to any standard. And now the people who've been subject to it, the young men who've been subject to it, are talking back to you. And it's what needs to happen.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter that you think they're misogynist, because they're basically just putting up a mirror to you and your statements and just reversing them because you can't stop them.
It's a big no you.
Yeah.
I got a super chat I want to read, and then I want to hear Carl's response, because I haven't heard this. I haven't heard this video actually. I started it, and I was starting to, like, when Carl said the men's movement appears to be dying, I was rolling my eyes so hard. Okay, so Dean Domino 25 gives us $4.99 as a super chat and says, not a fan of when these culture commentators jump into this conversation with little research. Friday Night Tights did so last week towards the end. Dean Domino, if you could get me the link and the time codes, I'd like to have us respond to that, because I think the Friday Night Tight guys are, like, you know, they're sort of in the general vicinity adjacent to us, but you're right, they don't know what they're talking about, or they haven't been doing it very long, but that's when they're prime. They're prime for the suppository known as the red pill. So, yeah, if you can get me the link to the show and the time code of when this conversation started, I'd like to take a look at it. Okay, so let's play Carl's response.
I think you've got a great point here, because I think they realize that what Andrew Tate really represents is a generation of young men who are actually not vulnerable to the emotional blackmail of feminism. So we don't care. We've been raised in feminism. You are the power structure. We are the ones suffering. We need to be able to get what works for us, even if it's only materialistic, hedonistic satisfaction in the short term. Well, I mean, you set the paradigm. You said, well, women can go out and do anything they want. Well, great, we're going to take advantage of that now. And so feminism realizes that actually its claims on men were reliant on there being a kind of traditional man to make those claims against. A man who thinks, oh yeah, I have an obligation to women. Well, if you then, through feminism, have raised generations of men who don't feel they have obligations to women, why would they listen to you at all? You're a woman.
Their obligations have been termed patriarchal oppression. I think we're in furious agreement with these people.
I mean, I generally agree with this. I think some of the language is not great, I mean, and I know I don't mean to be a stickler for words, but I think that using the language of feminism feeds into feminism, and it's best to android it. Don't call people misogynist. Boys, and I'm not they're not going to hate women. That's ridiculous, So
I'm not even going to disagree with Andrew Tate not really bringing a hell of a lot to the table, except a counterweight to the bullshit that we've been spewing towards men and boys. Like he's a doofus. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
He just like, why would you piss off the Romanian mob? Like,
well, whatever. I mean, I don't know about that, but like that, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know about that, but
it's a bit of a joke. But anyway,
yeah.
My overall point is, I don't think he really adds anything substantial.
Well, if the only thing that he's given is that men are allowed to rebel against women,
yes,
and then that's, I'll take it. That's a start.
Yeah, and hopefully that's a start, and then hopefully we'll start to move towards something a little bit more productive. But I think that's a lot of what they're saying too. Like, young men are embracing this, and honestly, like, again, I said this a long time ago in one of my videos. The only positive, even remotely socially positive identity that feminism has left to give young men is that of Playboy. Like, that of being sexually appealing to women. Right? That's it. That's the only thing left to young men. Yeah. And what a surprise, Andrew Tate. Yeah, is embodying that one last little speck of potentially being pro-social and being masculine. And it is pro-social. I mean, giving women sexual pleasure is still giving them something, even if you're not giving them relationships.
Yeah.
And being about attracting women is still attracting them, even if you're not giving them all of the things that they want long-term. Right? That's still pro-social. That's still defining yourself by women's consent and interest and desire. And it's the last thing. Like, I'm like looking at this and I'm like, Andrew Tate is the last passably pro-social way to define yourself as masculine within the feminist hegemony. What's next? What's next is to completely divorce yourself from this society and its framework for gender identity, and simply regard the society itself as your enemy. Completely. Like, it's the next stage is to become the sea people.
Yeah.
It's the next stage for men is to become the sea people. So literally to develop a culture of brigandship and piracy, as you regard the culture that supposedly raised you to be your enemy, your outright enemy. And that won't necessarily come through the people who are interested in Andrew Tate, or the young men who are calling out this misogyny or misandry. We're already seeing that with Antifa. Like, does that blow your minds? That is the attitude of Antifa. Society is the enemy, even though they have they're much more spawned from feminism. That's more likely where this is going to come from. Yeah. It's going to come from the first people who are going to regard society as being an enemy that they need to kill and destroy will do so because feminism has told them that society is an enemy that they need to kill and destroy.
Yeah.
So the Antifa are the sea people. Get it?
Mm-hmm. I get it, yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. I know.
All right. I'm going to continue.
I feel like I'm in some rarefied place that.
I think you put yourself there. I think everyone's listening. Okay.
I think that's realistic.
I don't know. I mean, I who knows? I mean, they're only in their early sort of 20s at the moment.
Exactly.
I do not know. But the problem is that, and this is what the feminists knew, is that, okay, well, we want to get them as young as possible because then we habituate them. You know, give me the child until he's 7 and I'll give you the man. Well, they've had the child and now they're giving us the men, and the men they're producing are not the men they wanted.
Exactly.
And they are very open to someone like Andrew Tate. It's like, look, this was all power dynamics. And the feminists came out and said, this was all power dynamics. It's all about take. And so, okay, well now, and you see this in the way that young women approach relationships as merely a transactional event in their lives. And so they have, you know, it doesn't matter if I've slept with 100 men, you know, or it doesn't matter if I do OnlyFans or whatever, I can just get whatever I can. And so the men are like, right, okay, well, our relationships with women are purely transactional. Therefore, Andrew Tate's right.
Purely transactional.
What?
Yeah. No, he's right. Like, and
Yeah.
again, what did feminists expect? This is what I kept saying over and over again. If you say that the only way that you can differentiate yourself as a man from a woman is to be criminal, yeah, you're going to put a lot of pressure on young men to be criminal.
There's that white male system again, being rational.
If you say that the only way to differentiate yourself from women, to have any kind of unique anything, like it doesn't, like you look at certain aspects of Black culture differentiating themselves from the majority culture by embracing a criminal identity. Mm-hmm. Well, why do they do that? Because something is better than nothing. And that's what feminists are putting young men into. And they're going to, and the thing after Andrew Tate is no longer the Playboy, which is passably pro-social because you're still eliciting women's desire. What's after the Playboy? What's after young men can't embrace that to differentiate themselves and develop a sense of value? Like, they see Andrew Tate as having value. Not just having value to them, but having value to women. Mm-hmm. So what's after that?
Jihad.
What's after jihad? Like, that's the sea people, that Antifa.
Jihad.
It's Antifa building freaking ships and starting to raise Ungarit. You know, like it's that. Mm-hmm. Because everybody's like, oh, Andrew Tate, oh, it's so awful. I'm like, this is the last flag, guys. He's raising the last flag. This is the final last flag before the shit hits the fan. You guys are complaining about the last flag. You're like, oh my God, look at him. He's such a misogynist. This is the last flag before it gets really fucking bad. I don't know when the really fucking bad starts, but it's gonna start, because you can't keep telling young men you're not part of society and expect young men to not eventually say, you're right, I'm not part of society. Where's the flaming pitch? You know, let's go get some arrows and lay siege to the granaries of the harem. You know, like, you can't keep doing this. You're constructing your own destruction. And every time we tell people you're constructing your own destruction, they say, oh my God, you're a bunch of misogynistic whores. It's like, okay, enjoy the pain. I hope that you have enough bloody sense in your head that when the pain gets to a certain point, you look across the chasm and say, oh, I guess that's a solution, as opposed to just falling in on fire, you know, and just hitting the bottom and dying. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody understood what the hell I just said.
Yeah, we do. I don't know what would, like, cause you to think that people do get it, because we are not having a conversation. People are just listening to you. But they get it.
Okay.
I'm watching the chat. Nobody's saying, what is she talking about? They get it. We all get it. We've been here a while. Okay.
everything about being a man in the feminist system. And the feminists are like, okay, but we required you to be the traditional men that we have removed from society. And so maybe in 20 years, there will be a generation of men just like, we don't care about women at all. We think you're prostitutes.
Possible, I think unlikely, because of our nature. Because I do
Let's
think
hope so.
I do think that a lot of people still want to pair bond. And
they still want the pair bond.
My hope would be that an Andrew Tate for young people then goes into a Jordan Peterson who, as they grow older, and I
would. Sorry to interrupt. I totally agree, but like, there's no more bitter an enemy than someone who feels that they have been betrayed, and I think that a lot of young men will currently feel betrayed. I think they genuinely feel betrayed by society.
Yes, they do.
There is no position of honor for a young man at the moment. There's nothing that they can aspire to.
The last position of honor is literally Andrew Tate. I mean, everybody's horrified by him, but what has he actually done? As far as I can tell, piss off the Romanian mob and help women make money on OnlyFans.
I said before, although my voice was probably more raised back when I said it, that if you don't like Andrew Tate attracting young men, then you're going to have to offer something else. And no one is doing that except for Andrew Tate. So somebody's gonna. Well, we are, but we're not reaching anybody. And I mean, like, you know, you could help.
Well, we are reaching a few people.
Yeah, I know. But my point is that he is the top G right now because you can say a number of factors. But the point is, men are going there. And if that's the only refuge that they see because they don't see anybody else, then I'm not interested in discouraging them because the alternative is the noose. So I don't want that for men. I want them to have some kind of purpose. I'm going to keep talking about what I think would be a good idea. I'm going to keep pushing people to like create spaces that men can be in without the oversight or involvement of women so that they can find out about their identity, so they can find themselves. But we can't just strip that from them. It's like incels, for example, they go to incel forums and they go there to be with people who are going through the same problems, suffering, frustration, sadness, you know, despair that they are feeling. And that is, for them, they try to create a positive environment. I've had guys that run the incel forums on before. I've spoken to them about what their goals are. It is a place for these kind of men to go. And what do people like Laura Bates want to do? What do the feminists want to do? They want to take that away from them. They frame them as violent. They frame them as misogynistic, as racist, as whatever. All of the bad things they can throw at it, they throw at it. And the purpose of it is to keep them from associating with each other. What will happen to incels if you take that one thing they have, their refuge, their oasis, you strip it from them? They're going to self-destruct. They're gonna do something terrible. They're gonna destroy themselves, or they're gonna hurt other people. We don't want that. And I'm not saying that this is something that they're prone to doing, but I'm saying that you're taking away what little men have. And I think the same applies to someone like Andrew Tate. There are plenty of people out here talking about stuff, but they're not being, like, for whatever reason, algorithmically, because of big tech, because nobody wants to, whatever, they're not reaching anyone. So,
I want to know.
And if the only place they have is him, even if it's unhealthy in the short term, I would rather they were there than basically
killing
themselves. Exactly. So like,
yes.
And of course they're betrayed. Feminism's never going to help them. In fact, they're trying to take this resource from them too, right? So it's like literally they're saying, men, I don't care how depressed you are. Just kill yourself. That's basically what they're doing. So it's like, well, I'm sorry, but I think that Tate is better than suicide. Call me bad. I don't know.
Change my mind.
Change my mind. But I think that going to someone like Tate is better than suicide. I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna go ahead and make the statement. I'm putting it out there. I'm spitballing, guys. But I think that might be better than suicide. There's plenty better than Tate, but that doesn't appear to be on the table right now because Tate has forced himself on the table. So men are going to be on the table. We are trying, but we're only going to reach where we're going to reach. So there you go. It's either that or maybe all the people that shoe on head gave us clips of that basically said for men to die and fuck them and that they're terrible and all that. How about those? How about the commies? How about we send them to the commies? How does that gonna work out? How's that? Is that working? No? Huh. Interesting that. It's almost like there's very few options. Very few options. So maybe we should like allow men to take whatever resources they can and so that they don't off themselves. Okay, Allison.
Yeah? Okay. Well, what I wanted to point out is one, and I'm separating the charges laid at Andrew Tate from the things that he said. Okay? He is the last bit of honor. He's the last bastion of how men in our society within the feminist framework can see themselves in terms of women. Let's just put it out there. You said he's not gynocentric. You're 100% right, Brian. He is gynocentric. He represents the last way that young men can see themselves in terms of their relationship to women in this society in a positive fashion as a playboy. Okay? That is the last positive relationship that feminism has given men in this society. After this one goes, there are no positive relationships left for men, specifically men, between men and women in this society. None whatsoever. He is the last flag before the cliff. And then there's nothing. There is no positive relationship to be had within the feminist framework between men and women. And yes, he's gynocentric because he's still offering young men a way to revolve their identity around the desire, the interest, and the pleasure of women. He's offering them a way to be attractive to women, to see themselves positively in relation to women. There's nothing left after Andrew Tate. Nothing. No remaining relationship between men in this society and women in this society. That's it. That's the end. We're done. Put a fork in it. We're over.
Yep.
And so, of course he's gynocentric. And of course we don't have the same reach. Because what are we saying? Are we saying this is how you can create a positive relationship with women, men? I mean, how you can see yourself in terms of benefiting women in order to generate a sense of positive value. Is that what we say? Is that what we focus on? No, it's not what we focus on. What we focus on is women need to take responsibility. Men need to take care of themselves. Men need to establish appropriate boundaries with women. Men need to help each other establish appropriate boundaries with women. And we don't present some kind of relationship. Well, let me put it this way. We don't present a gynocentric view of relationship between men and women. I don't say, okay, this is what you guys need to do in order to gain a sense of approval from women. I don't usually say that. I don't think I've ever have. Have I?
I don't think so. No.
No, I mean, I want men to engage with other people with courtesy and respect, of course, but I don't frame it. I'm like, it's not the same way. Andrew Tate is saying, this is how you get women's desire. This is how you benefit women by having them desire you. And that is a benefit. Like when you become desirable to someone, it's because you benefit them somehow. So Andrew Tate's saying this is how you become of benefit to women, guys. It's within the Playboy model, which is the last thing that feminists have given men. But it's still, this is how you become of benefit to women. Like I said, we don't do that. We're talking about how do women become of benefit to men.
Yeah.
And not in terms of the traditional, wife and mother's things. No. How do women take responsibility for men in their lives? How do they recognize the harms that men face? How do women develop the courage and the strength not to quail like a child in the face of a man who is experiencing something painful? That's the kind of stuff that we talk about more than we talk about how do men benefit women. So you're absolutely right. Andrew Tate is gynocentric. It's why he probably appeals to men more, because he appeals to that gynocentrism and also that desire to see themselves than their actions in terms of their outcome. So this is the other thing that feminism does. I said that feminism is patriarchal because they're always about they're not really about smashing the patriarchy. They're just about how patriarchy makes them feel. So then they can then go to the patriarchy and say, "Oh, these actions made me feel this way. Could you do something different?" And the patriarch is like, "Oh yes, of course, dear." And that's feminism. But the other thing that feminists do is, like I was having this long discussion, and we talked about this yesterday, Brian. So during the game stream, I think men and women.
I got that. By the way, I figured out why it was lagging. It was because I was streaming in Discord and streaming on OBS, and I guess when I thought I was streaming in Discord, I thought I was just sharing my screen. So it was like trying to do double duty. That's why it was struggling. But if next time I do it, it should be way smoother. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right.
I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. So, I think that there's sort of a humiliation that men and women experience in the face of each other. For women, it's the physical reliance that they have on men. And for men, it's the psychological reliance that they have on women. And what feminism does for men and women is it constructs this kind of lie or artificial reality in which women are not dependent on men physically, even though they are more dependent on men physically than they ever have been throughout all of human history. And men are not psychologically dependent on women. Because the big thing about patriarchy theory is what? It's actually men who somehow use their masculine miasma to make women make decisions and have influence. Even though, remember, Barbie movie. You notice how they just sort of glossed over how the men use their masculine miasma to influence women? Like they didn't even bother to explain it, even though you'd think that this would be the most critical thing for feminists to understand, which is how men use their wiles, their masculine wiles, to make women do what they want. You'd think that without doing any, because Ken's never engaged in any kind of force. And in fact, Ken had a complete breakdown when it came to the point where he would have to use force to push his will. So the Kens never used any force. All they used is masculine wiles, right? But we never got to see that. Just glossed right over it, even though it's like a critical plot point. But then we got to see the Barbies using their feminine wiles to influence the men. And why is that? It's because they don't have any clue how men use masculine wiles to influence women. But everybody knows how women use feminine wiles to influence men. Okay? And so, but the whole thing with patriarchy is that it's basically saying, well, no, actually society is defined by men's psychological seduction of women, not women's psychological seduction of men. And that hides, for both cases, it hides men's psychological reliance on women and women's physical reliance on men. So it's like a fig leaf. We're each hiding our humiliation from each other. And that's the other thing that feminism does. And I think Andrew Tate still buys into that. And to a degree, I think Jordan Peterson buys into that.
Yeah.
And I think what we do at Honey Badger Radio is we rip off the fig leaf and everybody runs screaming. But we got to, at some point, be honest with each other, regardless of how humiliating people think it's going to be. Yes, men are psychologically dependent on women. Yes, women are physically dependent on men. And you know what? That's what we got. That is the deal that we got. That's the deal we got from Mother Nature, the spaghetti monster, and God. That's our deal. Live with it. Grow from it. And stop lying about it.
Yep.
All right.
I guess there's a little bit more left in this, and I think that's it.
Going to collectively applaud that isn't also a position for a woman, which will be obviously given preference over the man. So the young men are essentially being locked out of honor and plaudits in society. I don't blame them for feeling betrayed at all. I think they have been betrayed. And so I'm not surprised that Andrew Tate's fan base is very rabid. And they are very committed to Andrew Tate. And it's just like, okay, that's very interesting. That's all I'm saying. You know, I totally agree. I would like it if that could be the case, but who knows? You know, if they've been
I'm just
20 years of being a materialistic, transactional product of feminism might make it so that the part of them that would have bloomed, they're essentially what C.S. Lewis called men without chests. As in they haven't got the ability to feel that kind of love anymore, maybe. Who knows?
I would assume it was always the job of the woman to tame the beast in the man.
Yeah.
Men have not been beasts for a very long time.
Yeah.
Maybe they're turning a little bit into beasts again. What these men then need are caring and loving women.
But where are the caring and loving women? Because
Well,
Yeah, where are the caring and loving women?
are they turning into beasts? I mean, maybe.
No,
that's-
Well, who knows? Like maybe in terms of, I think he's being very Jungian or something,
yeah.
which is fine. Like look at Snow White, right? In a way, the dwarves were beasts.
So
Original
the
Snow
original Disney. Did you watch it recently, Allison?
No, I didn't. But I know from what you said and what I
I talked
remember.
about it. So yeah, the dwarves were like. Well, I guess you could say the seven dwarves were like beasts in that they were. They lived a comfortable life that they enjoyed. You got that, but it was like, you know, it did not. Essentially, it was a messy home, and they left the dishes out, and you know, it was covered in cobwebs, and it was a filthy place. And Snow White came, and she basically, I guess you could say, she turned the house into a home, or she civilized it. Now, I know some people would get upset and basically say, oh, men can do those things too. Yeah, I get it, but this is symbolic. This isn't reality. You know, what it symbolizes is Snow White, what she brings to the table is that she, and these dwarves were not romantic partners either. This was a platonic relationship. She loved them, she cared for them, she cleaned them, she fed them, and she, you know, picked up after them. And the dwarves, in return, they gave her a home, and, you know, they entertained her, they sang songs for her, and they protected her when she was in danger. So it was kind of it was that setup. So in a way, she civilized them because they were living, I guess you could say they were living like bachelors, but there was more like a frat house, and they were all like roommates. I don't know if they were related or anything in the movie. And I think that it's basically a very symbolic, you know, image of the typical male and female relationship, the dwarves and Snow White. And it was really positive message for women too. I mean, obviously, you know, what's her name, Ziegler and Disney is going to absolutely destroy that, because they just don't understand men and women at all. And I mean men and women. Like, feminists don't just understand men. They also don't understand women. And so
they don't like women.
Yeah,
like they don't like femininity.
Yeah, they don't like women.
This is something that I sort of wanted to do in my story, is that to bring back this idea that, and you have to challenge the notion that traditionally women are oppressed in order to value the feminine again. Because if you don't, then the traditional feminine, the kind of Snow White feminine, is just a woman embracing her oppression, rather than a woman embracing a unique feminine power of influence and not just civilization. Because really what she did is she probably increased the level of comfort that they had.
Yeah.
And you know, and made it so, you know, level of comfort, level of morale, and maybe reduce some of the chaos so that they could be working more efficiently, which is traditionally more what women did. And like, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, throughout history, women were working, and they were the source of most material comfort. Like, if you wanted to have proper water, if you wanted to have food during winter, and if you wanted to be able to sleep somewhere warm, that was all controlled by women. You know, if you wanted to have proper clothing, it's all controlled by women.
Mm-hmm.
And even in like a hunter-gatherer society, the woman is responsible for the material comfort of the men. She's the one
children.
that makes sure that they're wearing proper clothing, that the food is properly stored and prepared for winter. You know, this is it also in many cases that the medicinal plants that help them get through any kind of health crisis. You know, this is really critical, but it's all a supportive role. A supportive role, in some cases, a mentoring or muse role, or an inspiring role, or a motivating role. It's not necessarily at the tip of the spear, but nevertheless, it's in many cases the shaft of the spear. So the spear. It's what gets the arrow to where it's going.
Yeah.
And in order to reframe all of history as oppression of women, feminism had to erase the massive input, the massive amount of what women did to get us to here. So not only is feminism in contempt of men, it's contempt of women and everything. Like, they only ever look at the women who did what men did, right?
Oh yeah.
Even though, and they don't look at it in terms of, oh, hey, actually, if women did want to do what men did, often they were able to do it. Often women were able to have significant political and philosophical power in the greater society, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you know, you look at French society, and it was all those matrons of the art that really brought out a lot, or, you know, patroned a lot of artists. Like, it was Ludovico's wife who patroned, oh goodness, Leonardo da Vinci, right? It's a huge power over the arts women had throughout history. And it's not just that. It's that the regular women, the women that feminists never ever think about, the ones who aren't actually rebelling against their quote unquote role, the importance of their contribution to society is held in complete contempt and dismissal by feminist historians.
Yep.
The contribution of generations upon generations upon generations of Snow Whites who are 100% feminine, 100% supportive, 100% in a role of making the world kinder. It's not just civilizing men, they're civilizing the world for men. They're making it kinder. They're making it them a soft place to land after they have to deal with the harshness of the world. Maybe we should look at it more like that. They hold all of them, all of the Snow Whites in history, in utter contempt with their narrative of oppression. Oh, they weren't women who were being courageous in their own way, in their own uniquely feminine way. They're all patsies. What a bunch of bitches. Like, you talk about Mean Girls, how much meaner does it get? And that's another thing that I can't stand about feminism. Okay, sorry for blowing out everyone's fucking eardrums there.
Loser, we're going shopping.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just playing a Mean Girls clip. I have one that agrees.
Oh, good, because I'm sorry, I couldn't actually hear you. Did I blow out everyone's eardrums? Sorry about that.
No, I heard you.
My freaking Discord decided to not send the sound through the ear headphones again.
Oh, weird.
But anyway, it's like
fetch. What is fetch? Oh, it's like slang from England.
All right.
But it's like, it's such Mean Girl bullshit. And it's anyway, so they hold men in contempt, they hold women in contempt, and in my story I sort of wanted to fight back against that and actually present the feminine role as in a context in which you can see the influence and the importance of it. And anyway, so okay, I'll step off my soapbox so we can continue.
I think that there's really, that's it. I think I guess most of it is fine. But there were just, you know, maybe it's just little things that people wanted us to address. But I mean, most of it is fine. But I disagree with the initial premise that you know, it's I don't know.
Well, the truth is never really going to run out of steam, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, we're just, you know, the men's issues and all of this stuff that we talk about is just going to remain the wall in the distance that society is busy rocketing towards. You know, this is either society is going to recognize the issues that we talk about, or people are going to start recognizing these. Maybe I shouldn't say society, but the institutions are going to start recognizing these issues that they talk about and start dealing with them honestly. And men and women are going to start honestly dealing with each other and stop indulging in this humiliation and this dance of humiliation.
Yeah.
Or we're just, you know, like, we're not going to survive. Like, it's either or here. So either this stuff gets recognized by the general people and the pain becomes sufficient, and before the despair takes over, they look over the chasm and see the light of what we're shining and say, oh, well, that looks like it could be a solution, and actually come over to this side of the chasm, or they don't and they fall into it. And it's like, I don't know what else we can do. You know, we got to keep the light shining, and we got to make sure people know that there is a place to go, and that people are not going to die if they just face the humiliation, you know, if they tear off their fig leaf. And I know that what we say is not going to be popular until that pain is at a level where men realize they got to face that humiliation, and women realize they got to face that humiliation, or there's not going to be a future. And I think that's really what keeps us out of the mainstream, is that we're just like hanging out like the nudists, you know, we're just like, yeah, hi, we don't have any fig leaves. Everybody else is like, oh my God, I don't want to go over there. I don't like the nudity. It's humiliating. Give me the extra strong fig leaves. You know, like, it's just, it's gonna take a lot for people to realize that they got to rip off their fig leaf and just go au natural. You know, just accept our vulnerabilities to each other, and grow and move beyond them. You know, it's not a message that people want to hear, because they still want to be terrified of being vulnerable and humiliated. Yeah. Like, they're just still there. There was something interesting that one of my psychologists told me, is that people will embrace fear. Humiliation is more painful to people than fear. So it's, you know, you really got, it takes a lot for people to face things that they find humiliating. And one of the things that people find humiliating is the vulnerability that men have to women, and the vulnerability that women have to men. And they will slap feminism on that to hide it from themselves. And that's what we're doing. And as long as we do that, we're not going to make any progress. So there you go.
Yep. Okay. So I got some super chows and a super chat, and I think we're done. So let's do the super chows first. I got one from He's John Cena, which is Richard Bier, for $5.
And his name is John Cena!
And he says, what's the difference between the Sea People and the Mongol horde led by Genghis Khan again? Question mark.
Ooh. Okay, so that's one fielded for me, and like that sounds like my wheelhouse. All right. The Mongol horde led by Genghis Khan, which I sometimes reference, is actually not really that accurate, because the Mongol horde is an external enemy. They don't regard the people, the women of the people that they conquer, to be, they don't have a relationship with those women. They might end up with a relationship with those women, but they don't start with one. And they often just don't have the same attitude to the women of the people that they conquer as they would to their own women. Because, for example, I think it was Genghis Khan who actually had, like, he would conquer a people, and then the leader of that people, he'd have his mother adopt them so that they would become brothers. So there was a lot of respect for women in that culture, but not necessarily if they were your enemy women, which is where you get a lot of the, you know, the raping and the killing and etc. Is men towards women they don't regard as their women. But the difference between the Mongol horde and the Sea People is that the Sea People are men who've realized that their society is the enemy. Okay? So their women are the enemy. So they will treat their women, or supposedly the women that were supposed to be their women in their society, the same way that the Mongol horde treats enemy women. they have decided that they are no longer part of the society that they grew up in and have become brigands and pirates and have developed their own culture separate from it because they've basically been pushed out of it because they have no way of establishing a relationship to it. And that's what happens when you have these harem societies. And all the women want to be in the harem because the harem is the safest place. It's the most consistent amount of food. But the only problem is that, when you're not forming families, then you're not getting the most productive society. Yeah. Like family formation, it encourages productivity. So eventually the productivity of your society declines and the men have no connection to it. And so what do? Well, they stop being farmers because they're not getting what they want out of it. They're not getting family and often in the case of these harem societies, the farmers' yields are taken entirely by the bureaucrats and put into the granaries and the harems. All right? So these farmers see this happening and they get only a little bit of an allotment of their own harvest. And they say, why the hell am I even part of this system anymore? I mean, I'm doing all the work, I'm paying all the taxes, and I'm getting absolutely nothing from it. Except maybe a meager existence. So I might as well just throw down my hoe and pick up a spear and become a sea people. Because at the very least, I'm getting the stuff that I made myself back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the process. And that's sort of where we're going. I mean, like I said, Andrew Tate is the final flag before the sea people.
Yeah.
It's the final flag before there is absolutely no relationship, no way for a man in our society to see himself as in any kind of positive relationship with a woman at all. Like Playboy's the last one that feminists allow men. After that, there's none. And at that point, when men realize there's absolutely no way in this society for me to have a positive relationship with a woman, what's their choice going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to continue to pay taxes? Are they going to continue to see their harvest taken away and put into the harem granary? Or are they going to pick up a spear and say, you know what, fuck it? And honestly, at that point, we have no moral authority over them because we have told them that they are the enemy. And these young men have finally decided, yep, you're right. This society is my enemy.
Yep.
We told it to them.
Yep.
Okay,
thank you for the super chow. And then I got one from Rorschach's No for $10. And he says, I've been rambling about the lack of discernment in the discussion of lonely males. Yes, males get lonely. But for a short time over the course of their lives, males are very adaptive and may adapt to enjoy the solace over the conditions of the civilization that hold them in contempt with social landmines between the sexes. Look at the declining likelihood of men entering marriage after the age of 30. Yeah, we've been talking about that too. And, I think that this antisocial setup that we have is not healthy for men or women, especially because we are learning that later in life, women in particular are the very regretful of their choices because then they're alone, they don't have any children, they wish they did, and I don't really want that for people who really want that. I think that they should know the truth about reality so that they can make educated decisions about their life instead of going off of this agitprop that they're being bombarded with all the time. So
yeah, and also I don't think feminists really have anybody's best interest in mind at all.
Yeah, why are we listening to people who literally are anti-human? They're
honestly, at this point, it's hard not to conclude that.
Yeah, exactly.
Being feminine is a patsy, being man is a masculine is oppression. You've pretty much covered all humans. I guess the gender fluid. Maybe that's why everybody wants to be gender fluid now.
They're trying to get out of that.
Yeah, they're trying to get out of that trap.
But they're in there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I do have a thank you to give to Math Freak 123 who gives us $5 for the Badger Media Blitz. And if you would like to help us out, once again, that's
Wow.
feedthebadger.com/support. We do need your help to keep going with this kind of content. Because again, nobody wants to rip off the fig leaf.
Yep.
And it's like, it's a very difficult sell, but you guys, every month you step up and you make sure we have another month to continue. And that's been really amazing. And I appreciate it. And please continue to do so we can continue to give you this content, which is hopefully very enlightening, gives you lots of things to think about. And one day, maybe the rest of the world will look over the chasm and see the light and say, hey, well, they seem to be doing a bit better than we are. And build the bridge instead of just falling into the chasm to their deaths. So there you go. Feedthebadger.com/support to make sure these shows keep coming. And feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you want to send us a message, you want to give us a shout outs, tell us that we're not screaming into the void, that you appreciate what we do. And that if there's anything that you felt we didn't cover in this video, you can send a time code and tell us, hey, well, they said this here. And I can't believe that you didn't address it.
Yeah.
Or you can say that, wow, you did a great job. Or you can counter any of the points that we made. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And yeah, thank you. Thank you to everybody who supports us. And back to you, Brian.
All right. Well, before I
final
close this
thoughts
out, I do have one more super chat I want to read before final thoughts. So Dean Domino 25 gives us $4.99 and says, I sent the FNT stream and rough timestamp to Badger Arcade account. Is that Twitter? Be warned, they talk about single moms being that way because dad walked out. Well, I can't blame him for being misinformed because, as we've said on the show before, most people are misinformed on that. And most people, FNT is Friday Night Tights. It's basically like Nerdrotic and the, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not men walking out. It's not men walking out.
Obviously not. It's the Great Society. It's women excluding them. It's everything
Well, it's not
else,
just that. It's like women having children with men who never gave them any kind of commitment in the first place.
Yeah.
So they're not walking out. Like, so how people have to realize that you gotta let, like, if you want a commitment, you have to let somebody make it. You can't just assume it. And the other thing is that women, because of welfare, they don't need commitment before they have children. And in fact, they're incentivized to have them without a commitment. Like, this is, welfare has been one of the worst social experiments on human nature. It's like awful.
Yep.
And nobody wants to take responsibility for it. And it couldn't have been, you know, the thing is, it could have been less bad if they hadn't been like, oh no, you can't have welfare if you have a man in the home that, you know, a able-bodied man in the home. It's like, that was destructive. Like, even if the man isn't working, he can still be of benefit to his children, right? And we stripped men from their children using welfare, and it destroyed people's futures. You know, and like, if you're gonna have welfare, at the very least, do it in a way that doesn't destroy people's futures. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, no, that's it. I was just saying that, like I said, you know, I have some sympathy for FNT because they don't know. I mean, they don't do what we do. They watch Star Wars and shit. So, like, you know, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out eventually.
You have to understand, like, we've all done this for years.
Yeah.
Like, we can quote chapter and verse, like, academic studies and political things that we've witnessed firsthand. You know, things happening. A lot of people don't. They don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Right.
We do, because we've been tumbling down it for like 20. Well, I've been tumbling down it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Brian's been tumbling down it for 10.
Yeah, the average person doesn't know. So, you know, I get it. Like, I talk to people, like, you know, people in my community, and I talked to one guy. He worked on my car, and you know, he has a wife and a daughter, and he said that he watches our show and that he knows who Pearl is and stuff, but he's not, like, there's still stuff that he hasn't wrapped his mind around yet. This stuff isn't easy. I mean, You know what I'm
No,
saying?
it's not.
Like, I'm grateful that he's even open to listening, because like he says he watches us, and shout out to Will if you're watching. But like,
well,
but
this
this
stuff is
isn't.
difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. But like, I think there are people who have the courage, because it takes courage.
And it takes time
pursue
sometimes
this.
too.
And time, yeah. You have to be open and you have to be brave, especially because if you're a woman, you're gonna have to hear some stuff about you or your nature or people like you or whatever that you have never been exposed to, because you have never been treated like an adult. And so,
well, and also men.
Yeah,
men have to
men.
be willing to be exposed to something that can be potentially humiliating.
Yeah.
Just like women do. You know, there's a lot of pain behind what's happening today for both men and women. And it's difficult to get through. But the other thing is that a lot of the stuff we talk about is both very intimate and very abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when people are like, "Well, you don't have the reach of like Andrew Tate or Pearl," you know, it's like, well, yes, because we're talking like calculus, right? They're talking addition. There's not a lot of people who are going to be able to just sit with what we're saying and try to understand it. It's more difficult. The what we're talking about is on this radio is difficult stuff. It takes a while to just be, like Brian's saying, wrap your mind around it. Let it happen. And it's even more hard because it's ripping the fig leaf off. You have to open yourself up to things that are sort of humiliating, and nobody likes that. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, you know, me, Brian, Karen, Hannah, Dr. Randomer Cam, Lauren, Prim, and all the others, I guess we're just okay with it just hanging out and being naked. You know, we're just over that somehow.
Yeah. For
some reason, our minds just aren't as bothered by it. But for a lot of people, it is bothersome. And, you know, that's where they're at. But it means that we're not going to have the same kind of reach as other people like Andrew Tate, who still talks about these issues but hasn't torn the fig leaf off, if that makes sense. And I don't know where Pearl's gone. I mean, Pearl mostly focuses on women, so. And I think that's what Pearl is doing. She's just going amongst the women and being like, yoink.
Yeah.
You don't need that.
No, for sure. She is.
The women are just like screaming. They're like, "Oh my God, you took my fig leaf."
Yeah, like sometimes you gotta take something away from someone, and then they're like, "Why did you do that?" And then you explain, like they don't know that it's something that can be taken away. So,
yes, you don't. Yeah, okay.
Or that they don't deserve, and that they should be happy to have it, and maybe treated with a little bit more respect.
I'm gonna be honest, like. There was one thing that Philip said that was very true. Women don't need feminism to get what they need from men.
Of course not.
Right? You know, honestly, gratitude and a sense of mutual benefit will get them a lot further than what feminism does. Okay, feminism is much more useful on, it's less useful for the individual and more useful for the social system that feminism is supporting, is what I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. So women are much better off without it, and you don't need it. Okay? Like, women were granted by Mother Nature with everything they needed to get what they need from men, and also give men what they need. So it all works out. You can just chill out. You don't need the fig leaf. All right. That's it.
All right. So we can wrap it up here. We're going to. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show. If you want to watch the full video interview or discussion between Carl and Philip Tanzer, you can look at it in the description. And let us know, again, if you find any things in there that, you know, we should have responded to or that you want to draw our attention to. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.